If you use PowerPoint regularly, then you've probably noticed how quickly your presentation files can get so big. The problem is, PowerPoint doesn't tell you what's causing the file size to grow. In this video, we're going to show you how to get a breakdown of the content in your file. And then in the following chapters, we're going to guide you on the best approaches to compressing those large elements. There are 5 main reasons why PowerPoint files explode in size: fonts, images, embedded charts, embedded objects, audio or video. So let's get started by looking inside a large PowerPoint file. PowerPoint files are actually zip files. So what that enables us to do is we can open up the zip file. Here I'm using a free app called 7-zip to see what's inside the file. And if we look inside the main content holding PPT folder, you'll see that there's different types of content. So we've got media, we've got embeddings, we've got fonts. The problem with this approach is that when we go into the media, we can see there's a bunch of images in there. But it's very hard to look at those images like this and see where they are in your presentation. So what I'm going to do for this video is to use a PowerPoint add-in called Slidewise. So if we open the presentation, I've already installed Slidewise, so I can just click on the Slidewise icon. And you can see here that it's got a breakdown of the content in the file, very similarly to the zip. However, the main differentiator is that you're able to drill down. So we can look for that image 17, and I can jump to it with Slidewise. So I know exactly what image I'm working with and what slide it's on. I've added a link in the description for Slidewise. There you'll be able to find out more information and download it. It has a 30-day free trial. But one thing I should mention is it is a Windows-only tool. So let's take a look at how we can reduce the impact of fonts on the size of your file. As you can see here, Slidewise is clearly indicating that we've got over a megabyte's worth of fonts in your file. We can drill down to see each of the individual fonts used. And the first thing to note here is that the fonts are fully embedded. And that means that every character of each of the fonts has been embedded. You can see that Aptos Display doesn't have a file size next to it, and that's because it's a cloud font. And these are great because they are downloaded on demand from Microsoft servers, so they don't impact the file size at all. So wherever possible, I suggest that you, if you can, use cloud fonts. Now, we have got some options because the fonts are fully embedded here. We can choose to unembed the fonts. We do need to be careful when we use that option because it can cause issues with design and layout, because PowerPoint will sometimes substitute fonts if you don't have that font installed on your machine. Or we can choose to subset the fonts, and what that means is it will only embed the characters used in the text in the presentation. So let's give that a go now. And as you can see, that has dramatically reduced the size of the fonts within your file down to 281K. And the next approach would be to rationalize your fonts to make sure that you're only using ones that you intend to use. So Slidewise makes this really easy to go and find those fonts because we can just drill down and double click it to jump straight to where that font instance is. And then if we wanted to, we could go into here, we could use the font picker to change our font that way. But Slidewise makes it even easier to replace all the instances of the fonts. Just choose the replace fonts feature here. And then we can choose to replace every instance of this font here with Aptos Display. And if I hit replace fonts, there you can see that we've rationalized the fonts down to just 2. And in the process of doing that, you can see that fonts now has no impact on the file size. Let's now have a look at how we can find and reduce the size of images in your file. So as before, if we expand the images node in Slidewise, we can see that it's broken out by file type, and then we can expand again, and we can see individual images that are quite large. Let's double click it, and it takes you straight to the image, and you can see that that image is about 30 megabytes, which is absolutely huge. Now, an option to compress individual images is to use PowerPoint's native compress pictures feature in the pictures format tab here. So I recommend leaving delete cropped areas of pictures enabled. And then it's just a case of choosing the resolution that you feel comfortable with. So we might feel comfortable with print here. So if I press OK, and once Slidewise is refreshed, we can now see that this image is 563 kilobytes in size. The feature was clever enough to spot that it shouldn't have been a PNG and it should have been a JPEG, so it converted it automatically as well. Now this is a great option if you only want to compress a few images. However, if you did want to compress a large number of images or all of the images in your file, then the best way is to get a file compressor app like our Neuxpower Lite, which I've got installed here. I've put a link to it in the description below. And as I've got it installed, all I need to do is hit the optimize button, and it's just telling you the file needs to be closed before it can be optimized. So if I hit yes, it will load it into the file compressor app, and if I just hit optimize, it'll now go through and compress all of the images in the file. So now that it is reloaded, we can see that images are now down to 305 kilobytes, which is an absolutely incredible saving. And if we went through and looked at those images, they don't look any different at all. So as you can see, not only is that quick, but it's a very effective way to compress all of the pictures in your file. Depending on how you paste charts from Excel into PowerPoint, it can create large embedded Excel files. Slidewise makes it easy for you to see when that has happened in your deck. So if you look here, you can see we've got some embedded chart data. And if I drill down, you can see the underlying Microsoft Excel worksheet. You also can see the file size here of just over 2 megabytes. Let's jump to the chart using Slidewise. These embedded Excel files enable you to edit the chart's data. But what PowerPoint does is actually embed the whole file from where the file has been pasted. This means it can contain a lot of data that's not required for the chart. So those files can be unnecessarily large. This file's only got one chart, but if you copy and paste lots of charts in your deck, the file size can grow rapidly. So using Slidewise, you can remove this data by right-clicking and using the Remove Data option. This removes the underlying Excel file, but you still can change the formatting and style of the chart as you wish. However, you can no longer edit the data. Similarly to charts, Slidewise shows you all of the embedded objects in your presentation. Now, these are either documents or other application files that can be embedded within PowerPoint files so that they can be shared with them. But as you can see here, they can get rather large. And in this case, if we jump to it, we can see that this is a PDF file. Let's double click on it. And that opens the default application for reading PDF files. So there are some techniques available to us to reduce the impact of the size that embedded objects take up. And the first one's really simple and easy to do. If you want to keep the picture representation of the embedded object, but you want to remove the underlying data, then all you need to do is you need to right click and do copy and then choose paste as picture option here. And you can see here I've just got exactly the same, what looks like exactly the same, except for when I double click on this, it won't edit the file. The image we created is only 25 kilobytes. That's a significant saving over the embedded object. So that's the first approach. Next, if our embedded object is either a document or a compressible type such as this one, which we know is a PDF file, I can use the file compressor app to make it smaller and then reinsert it back into PowerPoint. So first of all, I want to save this file. So it's my PDF, and I'm going to call it my PDF, the compressed version. And then in our PDFs, we can look at the PDFs, we can right click it, we can use Neuxpower Lite again, and I'm just going to replace the original there. Hit OK. And you can see that that's been reduced from 16 down to around 3 megabytes in size, so quite a significant saving. So all we need to do now is to reinsert that object, insert object, create from file, browse. we know we're going to insert that as around a 3 megabyte file. So another option you've got here is to insert that as a link. And what that does is that inserts a picture of the file, but it will actually be a shortcut to the file. That has some advantages, means all the changes to the file that you make outside of PowerPoint will be reinserted into PowerPoint, so it always gets the latest version. But it does mean that you are reliant on that link. So if that link is on a network drive, you need to make sure everyone who needs to use the presentation has access to the linked file. I'm going to check the link box, hit OK, and you can see that I've ended up with the same sort of image. And then I can hit delete on the keyboard, make that exactly as it was, drop it in the middle. And if I refresh slide-wise, you can now see that instead of having embedded objects, we've now got linked objects, and there is 0 file size associated with it. And lastly, let's take a look at what we can do to minimize the impact of large video or audio files in your presentation. Once again, you can see Slidewise does a great job of showing you exactly where the files are in your presentation. And the first method I want to show you is actually how you go about inserting the video in the first place. You can actually choose instead, like we did before, to insert a link to the file rather than the actual file itself. If I refresh now Slidewise, you can see that that link video doesn't take up any file size. Again, it comes with the same caveats that everyone who opens a file needs access to that video file. So for now, let's just delete that video file, refresh Slidewise again. And the second method I want to talk to you about is PowerPoint has an inbuilt feature to compress video and audio. And you can access that by going to the File menu, Info, and up here you've got a compressed media. It actually tells you here how big the media files are. So let's go ahead and just hit the compressed media file. We get to choose what standard of quality we want. I'm going to go for HD quality still. And as you can see, PowerPoint is just going through and compressing that video. So it says here you've saved 1.7 megabytes in size. So now if we go back to the presentation, you should be able to see now that the video has been reduced to 3.6 megabytes. Now PowerPoint does a pretty good job of compressing that video, but if you want more control over how the video is compressed, or maybe to squeeze out some more space so it's even smaller, then I've put a link to another video in the comments below where I explain how you can export your audio or video and then compress them with a media compressor called Handbrake. I hope this video has been helpful in showing you how to find the content in your PowerPoint file that is driving up the file size, and then giving you some techniques and tips on how to compress that content. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've discussed, so please leave them in the comments below.